Okay, thanks very much indeed. Brexit has severely impacted the Irish fishing industry, affecting catching, processing and exporting. The loss of quota led to a decommissioning scheme, resulting in the loss of 40 boats from the commercial sector. This has significantly harmed fish producer organisations, especially the Irish South and West Fish Producers Organisation, the IS and WFPO in Cork South West, which saw its membership drop from 56 to less than 40. Question is, what supports do the Minister and the Department provide to the affected producer organisations? And the second question relating is, what payments, if any, were made to the fish producer organisations that lost membership and faced extra work due to Brexit?
I suppose, Deputy, the question, I'm just trying to consider it. So the producer organisations, their memberships are set, they're recognised under legislation within the EU, and then they receive certain funding from that. I am not aware of any specific provision within the bar regulation to compensate a producer organisation, and I think that's the point you're trying to make, is that correct? Yeah. I'm not aware that there was a provision within the bar regulation for that, and I don't recall it being a recommendation of the Seafood Task Force. But Deputy, I will look into it and come back to you. I don't think that's something that arose.
Okay, the EU production and marketing plan funding has not increased in over 10 years, despite rising costs. This makes the work for fish producer organisations unsustainable. Question is, when will the Minister of the Department increase P&P funding to account for the increased cost of living and doing business? You might be able to answer that.
Yeah. So the producer organisation scheme that was in place under the EMFF has been rolled over into this MFAP programme, and the conditions in which the funding can be provided haven't changed. I don't know the answer as to whether the amounts have changed, but the conditions. I do know that the producer organisations are working with one of the teams within the department to look at a new scheme, and the funding allocation I can't answer you, and I would have to come back to you on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And lastly, did the Minister of the Department recommend that fishermen and women on Irish registered boats be made eligible for a seafarer's income tax allowance, similar to that available to merchants, seamen and members of the Irish Naval Service? This differing treatment seems discriminatory. Is that the case?
In relation to a specific credit, I think that's what you're referring to, Deputy Collins. Any credit to it that's similar to the seafarers tax credit or anything like that, that would have to be, I suppose, a matter for the Minister for Finance and onwards for there. I don't have any information on that.
And have you any idea, did the Minister or Department confirm whether the recommendation was made pre-budget 2025?
I think Suzanne may want to come in on that. I do know that it was in one of the proposals, but in terms of I think it was in the Irish South and West proposal, but in terms of the department's capacity to progress that, I suppose it's primarily a matter for the Minister for Finance. I will come back to you, Deputy. I'm not prepared on that matter today.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to go back to the very first question I asked at the beginning, and thank you for answering the question to the best of your ability. What can fishermen do to turn the negative feeling that's out there? And that's, I know you'll say, how am I to answer that question? But it was the last question that was asked Bantry the other day. There's a negative vibe in the world of politics towards fishing, and what can they do to turn this around? You probably are not going to give me an answer that I want to hear, but they asked me, and it kind of caught me, because I've always been very vocal that we need a standalone Minister for Fisheries, because as I said, it got lost last week inside the Dáil, and that's what proved what I'm saying. Not a mention from both Minister of Finance, obviously Minister Agri-Marine will mention in his time when he's coming to talk about it, but they spoke about agriculture, and rightly so, and so many other things. But fisheries isn't at the races, and if it's not at the races, it's it's not in for discussion, and there's no hope of an improvement, there's no hope of a future. There's young people walking away from the industry. That's what they're telling me. I have 18 seconds left. There's young people walking away from the industry, and they're telling their parents, forget that. The game is ran. There's even politicians telling me that. I don't believe in that, because we're surrounded by water, and our waters are full of Irish fish. And God damn it, there's something wrong that we can't catch our own fish. You know, we have absolutely squeezed out of our own waters. So how, in the name of God, are we going to turn it around? First of all, I do realise that it's a political issue. There will have to be a standalone minister of some sort. Was refused to me in negotiations in 2020. I was told there can be no minister because that had to come from someone else. And a few days later, there was a super junior announced for forestry. Well done for them. But have you any ideas out there?
Well, I think you answered the first part of the question yourself, Deputy, in that I can't speak to the political process or to the political view. But I suppose in terms of what the department are able to put in place to support fishers and to try and move them through this, we obviously have the work of the department, the services they receive from ourselves, the work of our agencies, both the Marine Institute, who in the department invests a huge amount of money in terms of supporting their research in order to look at the stock assessments, in order to feed into the ISIS advice, in order to ensure that we have confidence in the advice that we're following in relation to the TAC and quotas. I think equally in terms of the significant investment that the department makes in BIM annually, and again a lot of their work is very much to follow through on government policy in relation to supporting the fishing industry, supporting technological developments, whether it's gear changes, whether it's better use of fuels, whether it's also even looking at trying to support diversification within the sector, not out of the sector, but within the sector in terms of multifaceted businesses. So in terms of the fishing industry and how they feel about themselves, I suppose I can only speak to what we see and what we're trying to do. And I mean, I don't think anybody can dispute the fact of the impact of Brexit and what we've been trying to do, the schemes that we've put in place to try and build on the capacity that's there. But equally, I think there's work to be done in terms of attracting landings to support the processing sector in terms of having raw material to process. And again, I think the issue earlier that I mentioned is Minister McConaughey's call within the CFP evaluation is to look at the economic link obligation. And I think that could be key. But equally, I think we need to look within ourselves and within the sector in terms of what we're doing to attract vessels to land. The department has put superb infrastructure in place across the 6 fishery harbour centres. There is a huge amount of capacity and investment there, and it's about trying to entice vessels to land and discharge their fish in order to process.
And just one other thing, there's no answer to this question. From talking to the inshore fishermen, from talking to the political sector, they want to fish their way out of the problems. They don't want compensation packages. They want to fish, and they're not allowed in our water.
Okay.
Thank you.